Welcome to Real Vision Crypto. I'm Ash Bennington. Very pleased to have with me today Steve Kurtz, Head of Global Asset Management at Galaxy Digital, to talk about institutional investing in the digital asset space. Steve, welcome to Real Vision Crypto.
Hey, Ash, thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. Steve, before we get started, tell us a little bit about your background before you went to Galaxy Digital.
Yeah, sure. Well, it ties to crypto in a way, and I guess I'll start with Mike Novagratz, our founder of Galaxy. I have two things to thank Mike for in my life. The first is introducing me to Bitcoin, which we'll talk about, and the second is hiring me to Fortress Investment Group from a firm called Lehman Brothers on September 11th of 2008, so 4 days before the world as we knew it at the time ended. So I would say my path has been through the sell side in Lehman, which was interesting and happy to talk about it. A good solid 10 years or so in the hedge fund space, both at a large platform, Fortress Investment Group, and then building from the bottom up a credit shop called River Birch, and then most recently before Galaxy in 2017, I actually left finance to start a virtual reality company and do some angel investing in the tech space. So that's been my sort of path, is finance to tech, and now somewhere in between, depending on where you want to bucket crypto and digital assets.
Yeah, that's really the key question, isn't it? How we think about it, how do we understand it? Give us a sense of what you guys do at Galaxy Digital, and also how you begin to think about these asset classes. It's interesting because I know that you guys are in a sort of a wide variety of different businesses now in the digital asset space. How do you think about it?
It's a great question. And I think the way that we think about it today is fairly consistent with how we thought about it in 2017 when we started the company. Much has changed with the underlying asset class, of course. But for instance, we did always think of it as an asset class. We did always think of it as a foundational base layer technology. We were never caught up in some of the crypto native fiefdom wars of one coin versus another. We always saw this as a tech revolution. And particularly, we saw it as a tech revolution that started with retail, that didn't know what it didn't know about how it could grow and scale and access all the different pockets of capital and express itself in the world. And we thought our business model, when we really set out to do this in 2017 with 8 of us, was geared towards being that translation layer. And that's hard work. That's education at scale. That's setting standards and foregoing commercial opportunities because you need to adhere to those standards. And it's a real patience that you have to have in a warp speed space, which crypto is. And so what we do is we have, in the traditional world, you'd say sort of a sell side and a buy side business construct, which isn't that exciting. We're the Goldman and the Blackstone of crypto together. But as we're evolving the business, we really think of ourselves as multiple platforms. We've got a mining platform. We've got a trading and intermediary platform. We've got an asset management platform. And so each of those are going to serve different client bases. We invest in the space off of our balance sheet. And I think that what you need to really help this space move forward on a global basis is to have that ambitious, broad reach, because it is about staying power and being capitalized and expressing this into different pockets of the world. And so that's what we're trying to do. We've never been narrow or vertical with our business. We've never been narrow or vertical with our view of what crypto is. And so when people talk about Galaxy, it seems like this, in some ways, can be confusing. But really what we're trying to do is expand that reach and educate and give access at scale.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking off camera a little bit about how this asset class is this interesting mashup between the technology and the financial investing component. You call that use the phrase translation layer. Tell us what that means to you.
Well, I think it means different things to different constituencies. We tend to think of the world and perhaps the crypto community thinks of the world in a somewhat myopic way, right? There's the retail participants, there's wealth platforms, there's allocators, there's service providers, there's regulators. Each of those different communities speaks a different language. And contrary to what anyone might say, I don't think there are bad people in one bucket or the other. There are some bad and some good. But generally, I think particularly because what crypto is so different and so confusing, people will have legacy mental models. Maybe someone came to them early and put a bug in their ear the wrong way. And you really have to take a thoughtful, patient approach to each of them. The way that you need to speak the regulator's language is perhaps different than how you talk to a large public pension, different than how you talk to a hedge fund that wants to trade with you. And so I think calibrating those messages and really fitting into the communication structures of each of them. A
Yeah.
hedge fund's going to want to talk to you every day about the market texture. A pension's going to want to frame it in the context of asset allocation and what their board is thinking about. A consultant's going to want to look at operational due diligence for a digital bearer asset. Regulators want to make sure that the consumer is protected through their definition of consumer protection. And so I think each of those, when I say translation layer, you have to have a strategy. You have to have people that are pulling it all together and making sure that our view of what's happening here and what the promise of that is authentic, and then is being expressed into each of those pockets in a calculated, specific way in order to move each of those balls forward.
Yeah, the fascinating thing about this space, to me at least, is that those things have never been done before. So there are no experts. There's no person who can kind of who knows every aspect of that space and how it all fits together. If you think of the hedge fund space, for example, someone like Mike, who's run a fund for many years, could tell you a little bit about every area of the business. But in this space, there really are no one individual who has managed to understand all of that, because it's never been integrated before.
Well, it's not just the lack of understanding, and you're right that it hasn't been integrated by its nature. In a way, crypto can be analogized to the internet, and I think
Right.
people expect on the other side of the table that we as Galaxy will defend all of crypto. My reaction is, why would we defend all of crypto? Just like you don't defend everything that happens on the internet. This is by its nature
Right.
open source. What we're supposed to do is say, hey, this is the stuff that goes in the garbage bin. This is the stuff that is here and now to be paid attention to, engaged with, invested in. Here's what's coming that's really interesting that will be a part of the puzzle tomorrow. And let's explore each of those buckets over the course of that time frame that it takes for that to evolve to. So I agree there needs to be, and I think the crypto community, to be honest, can do a better job of that. I think working together, assuming positive intent in some of the conversations that we are all having is going to go a long way. And I think a dose of humility would go a long way as well in terms of some of what you see come out of our space, although I'll probably get hit for saying that.
Well, it's interesting because it's also just so early as you talk about how to integrate this thing, how to understand what is going on in the space. Again, just so early. Let's talk a little bit about your role, Global Head of Asset Management. What does that mean? What is the job function, and how do you think about what you do?
Well, it's a phenomenal question, because when we started the company, we said, let's have an asset management business, and then we sort of said, well, what do we do next? What does that mean? Is exactly the right question. At the time, it was more of the Wild West than it is today. So for the last 4 years, the job was different than what the next 4 years will look like. The last
Right.
4 years was about setting standards and building comfort and familiarity around the asset class and all the aspects of what go into institutional fund management. So the first thing we did was we created the Bloomberg Galaxy Crypto Index with Bloomberg, on the view that the exchange inputs, the methodology,
Yeah.
the auditing of the methodology, all of the things that can go into a benchmark index haven't been done in crypto. Let's
Yeah.
start by defining the space and building taxonomy and language that we all think about consistently.
By the way, this was a huge story at the time when you guys released
Yeah.
that with Bloomberg. I was at CoinDesk in 2017, and we were actually looking at this and thinking about how to do this. The idea that there weren't references for the asset class as a general proposition, hugely problematic thing at the time.
Huge. And it was also a period of time where even the exchanges weren't operating like exchanges. They were making so much money that they didn't really care about any of that. We had to actually call the exchanges and say, take Bloomberg's call. I mean, think about that in the context of what the long-term impact of real data means. And so I feel like we had an impact there. I feel like Bloomberg was early, and we've built that suite out, and that's great.
There are also huge swings in delta between basically the delta between different exchanges. You could see products trading. You can see Bitcoin at 5% deltas across exchanges. This is a really wild time in terms of pricing.
When we spoke to institutional investors or consultants at the time, we were honest about where the space was. We didn't say
Right.
you should put 5% or 10% of your money into this space because it's too early. We did say you should be following it and you should start with a small piece here, but here are the challenges. And another challenge, so data was one, and that was something we worked on, obviously custody another, but really the service provider ecosystem. And this is not the sexy stuff that the crypto community wants to talk about. We had to treat the service providers, the real blue chips, the Deloittes, the KPMGs, E&Y, et cetera, like clients. We probably had 40 meetings with each of those, going through all the committees for the privilege of them auditing our fund, or whatever it was. And that, that doesn't get you AUM today, but I do think it moves the ball forward for the space. I think now here we are close to 3 billion in AUM with 15 or 20 funds. And when you look back on that body of work in terms of putting together the pieces of the puzzle, I think where we sit is in a privileged spot because people understand that was with the intention, the mission of bringing the space forward. And it was sort of a long-term greedy approach in the sense that we weren't trying to capture a spread. We were trying to build an ecosystem. And so when you translate that looking forward, what's my job? My job is for the institutional allocators, for the wealth platforms, for the retail pockets of the world to build institutional grade products and to be the first global platform that offers everything from the spectrum of passive to multi-manager to hedge fund to venture exposures in the crypto space.
Hey, if you like this clip, be sure to check out the full interview and more only on realvision.com/crypto. It's 100% free. Sign up now.